Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Grand Haven Special City Council Work Session of March 6th, 2023. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummings,
Here.
McNally.
Here. Basically, I think Ashley and I put this work session on together, and I've got a couple of remarks. If you'll all remember, at a meeting several weeks ago, this council voted to approve the recommendations of our Human Relations Council relating to a complaint of discrimination that had been filed against the BLP. One of the recommendations was that City Council and the BLP Board engage in mediation to resolve some long-standing issues in what I would characterize as communications and working relations. About 4 weeks ago, the BLP unanimously voted to engage in mediation with City Council, and about 3 weeks ago, the BLP chair sat down with the city manager and myself to talk about what this might look like. So tonight, I'd like for us to discuss as a body, are we interested in / willing to engage in mediation with the BLP? What subjects might be appropriate for mediation? And if we move forward, what type of person or service we would envision as mediator? Does that sound about right, Ashley?
Yes.
Okay. I can give you a little more about what the BLP envisions, if you're interested, or if you want to just tell me what you're interested in.
Yeah, I'd like to hear what your discussion was with Mike.
Yep, the discussion was relatively brief, and I think the BLP acknowledges that relations between our two bodies have not been entirely constructive, and they would like to improve the situation. But the issues, if you remember what the HRC recommended, they selected a mediator, and I think I mentioned at the meeting when we discussed this, I had talked to the person in charge of that mediation service, and they mostly engaged in, I'm going to call it family law mediation. Mm-hmm. That would be the character. They had other suites of mediation tools, but that was their principal line of business. I think that the BLP is more interested, frankly, in moving forward with some of the issues that remain standing between us, which would include how to proceed with cleanup on Harbor Island, and to do that, they would like to see mediation more of a legal nature, and to get mediation, we discussed that at length and what it might look like. There are local mediators who do that kind of mediation, but frankly, in my view, and it might not be your view, trying to figure out through mediation without attorneys on both sides, the path forward for hashing out the funding for Harbor Island cleanup would be very difficult. So it's again an issue of, do we engage in a type of mediation that moves us forward on Harbor Island remediation? Because frankly, we're stuck as far as I'm concerned. And we're stuck because BLP has said they won't fund anything else, and we have very little funding to apply to what needs to be done. So I don't know, Ashley, have you got any more than that? Go ahead, Karen.
I would just say, I've got a lot of questions and just comments on this, and I guess we can start on any part of the topic. But I guess, thank you for providing your perspective and relaying what's happened. Starting with, when I reviewed the HRC recommendations, it said it was, the second paragraph of the recommendations was in response to the BLP's letter where they suggested that their problems could be solved by a self-guided evaluation. And I'm quoting the HRC response. Our response to that is an unequivocal no. If self-governance and in-house solutions were possible, this situation would never have gone on this long and become so serious that a citizen filed a complaint and the HRC spent months long in an investigation. Clearly, the BLP's attempted guide themselves are at the root of the problem, not the solution. Therefore, we recommend that a qualified independent mediation firm be hired by the BLP to help the parties, a number of parties, one being among their board of electors, between the BLP staff and elected directors, and then the third was between us, right? I read that, number one, as, the BLP should bear the cost of the expense of a mediator when we decide what that mediation is, facilitator.
Well,
And so
that's the.
So that's so anyway, it's a question. It's also sort of, I'm just providing you how I read that. And engaging in a mediator, I guess, I think it seems like the HRC's intent is to prevent the BLP board or certain trustees from exhibiting some of the alarming behaviors with members of council, particularly toward any minority opinions. So I think they were, and it specifically stated that there's an atmosphere of distrust and disrespect. And I think it was geared toward having a civil discourse and not one that would erupt in personal attacks on minority opinions. So when I looked at that, I was like, they're really not talking, HRC's not really talking about a mediator in a legal sense. Down at that level, I think they're talking about an unbiased, impartial facilitator, much like you did in our very first and only joint meeting with the BLP, which was over 14 months ago. We're at this impasse because we have not met publicly as a group. And, so anyway, I'm looking at that, and I believe, we need to have an open, transparent joint meeting. It's a little premature to go down a road where we are saying that we're at an impasse when we have not met for 14 months. Now, I'm not saying that individuals haven't tried to build some bridges, and I know Mayor McNally, you've done your best to try to bring parties together, but I believe the public is demanding an open, transparent process. And I say that because there are other indications in the HRC report which indicates that, the myriad of disagreements among the BLP have spilled over into media reports. This is a poor reflection of our city, and if allowed to continue, could have far-reaching and negative effects. Now, in that respect, I feel, there is some animosity because we have not been able to meet, air our different perspectives together, and have that out. Instead, it seems like there's things happening behind the scenes. And when that's not a productive way, and the citizens of Grand Haven deserve better. They deserve us to have an open, honest discussion and call people on behaviors that aren't fitting. I mean, it's just the mature way for elected officials to go forward. So I feel like putting legal mediation on a specific topic when we've not met for 14 months, even though in that meeting in January of last year, we promised, we made a public commitment to meeting at least quarterly to address the severe problems at Harbor Island. We made that commitment. And then suddenly it became, well, we'll meet with you if you pay the snowmelt bill, or we'll meet with you if you let us have our own attorney. It should be an unconditional, we'll meet, let's air those differences. And then if we get to a point after we've met that it's clear that specific topics like sharing cost of Harbor Island have to go to mediation, I'm all in favor of that. But what I'm concerned about is that we're not meeting. There's sidebar meetings that are happening outside of a public meeting, and I don't think they're doing anything, while well-intentioned to try to bring us together, we're as far apart as we were 13 months ago. So anyway, I guess where we started, mediation, facilitation, we need to talk about what that means. I think we have a lot of things to talk about with, with the BLP board members, because I really believe if we talk to one another in an open meeting, we'd find we have a lot in common. And, you know, part of it is, what does it mean to act civilly to one another and respect? Respect one another's opinions. I don't think, what I have observed is, I don't think we've agreed to those, you know, rules of civility, you know, and I think the best way to tackle that is to do that in an open meeting together, and we can decide what topics should go on the agenda going forward. The majority of both boards, you know, determining that. So anyway, I just want to put forward, I have some feelings. I'm very grateful for the HRC report. I think mediation they need to hire that mediator for all three purposes outlined in that report. But I see the benefit of having a facilitator, an independent facilitator, but I don't think, as proposed in our agenda, I think the words were, you know, as proposed by the BLP mediation, I don't think I agree with their definition at this point. I think let's start with a meeting, public meeting together.
That's certainly one side of it, and a legitimate side, Karen. I'm going to let everybody, I think I'll let everybody go through, and because certainly my view of what the HRC did, frankly, is chastised both boards. Okay, that is my view, whether you agree with it or not. So, and I thought it was relatively gently done, but I think it was to make a point that we all need to be civil to one another.
And I would agree with that.
Yep.
I would agree with that.
I think we're aligned on that. So I'm not sure how we get to, I'm not sure we can't, and I don't think it's a bad idea, but what you're saying is sort of a preliminary mediation that
Or
would
facilitate, I'd say use the word facilitate.
What would be your idea of what we would discuss?
I think what I would like to see as a starting point is, first, both boards there renewing our commitment to meet on at least a quarterly basis in support of all the stuff we have to deal with in Harbor Island, whether that's an update, ongoing issues that the team is coming up with, meeting quarterly, unconditional, not made on the condition that we do this or we do that. It's our responsibility, it's our fiduciary responsibility as elected officials, not to, it shouldn't be on conditions placed on one another.
Okay.
And I guess the second would be, Harbor Island, these rules of civility. How do we want to behave, with one another? Do we want to have it out in the media, rather than an open session? I think we call each other on stuff. I agree with you. Maybe we've done some stuff that, has, but until you talk about it, it's what mature individuals, mature organizations do. You talk about it with one another first and see if you can't solve that and kind of publicly monitor yourselves together. So I think those two things would be beneficial, and then at that meeting we could agree the topics that for future meetings, as well as things that might require at this point mediation, legal mediation. But I'd like to do that together in a public meeting for our community and for both boards.
Okay. Ryan?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here. I guess the first thing I would say is I'm a little concerned that I don't have a problem conducting mediation or facilitation or any of those. I think we all indicated that when we look at the HRC's report, so I don't have a concern with that. I have a little bit of concern that my understanding is so far the Board of Light and Power has only picked mediation with us, not amongst themselves or with their team has also recommended. I think if the intent of mediation is to, I do think that they're potentially separate issues of like trying to work out like legal issues is maybe a little bit further down the road than trying to discuss how we can better our relationship with one another and work better together going forward. I think some of that starts with a simple sitting down, you know, it could be a public meeting, obviously, but around a table,
With the
some
mediator?
dinner.
With the mediator?
with a mediator, without a mediator. I think some of it we have to work past amongst ourselves is simply roles and responsibilities of, I think they feel like we're overstepping in certain ways, and I feel like they think that we shouldn't be involved in certain things that we think we should be involved with. So I think even just like roles and responsibilities that we each have and understanding each other in that way and where we're coming from and is, so it may sound like back to basics, but if we can't get past that, I don't know how we get to some of the other concerns and issues that we have down the road. I mean, I think that's a huge piece of our conflict right now is kind of sorting some of that out.
Okay, so, just, I'm gonna propose, I might be, I'm gonna say unsophisticated in this, because I'll be honest and tell you, I don't know that much about mediation, but there are mediators like the one the HRC recommended, which principally does family law, but as they told me, has other suites of mediation tools. So but let's just call that's one type of mediator. Then I'm going to call a legal mediator, which would typically be someone who's sophisticated in the body of law that is being addressed, who basically acts as somewhat of a judge, but not depending on whether it's binding or non-binding between the two parties in each of them. Typically, because these are very sophisticated issues, if we get down the line to the legal issues, that would be, I would say, the more formal and sophisticated version of mediation. And in between, I would say there's something that we might fashion, which I know there's a local judge, Judge Post, who hires out as a mediator, and he's, I think, generally very well respected and might be able to mediate something like this. Haven't approached him, don't know that much about him, but it's been recommended in another regard. So if you were picking if those were our three options, and there may be more, but if those were our three options, where would you be?
Let me ask a question, though, a comment and a question, because I'm going to go back to that meeting in January of 2022. I thought you did a brilliant job of facilitating the discussion, and really, you did, of facilitating a fair and balanced discussion between both boards. And I walked out of that meeting, and I know I'm not the only one, fairly optimistic that even if we had we're starting from different starting points, that we would be able to figure out a way to come up with some common sense, solutions moving forward. What happened afterwards, I don't know why. All of a sudden, we weren't meeting, and so
part of the issue, and I'll own a fair amount of this, but part of the issue is, for us to meet in public, all right, we have to develop an agenda. And to develop an agenda, we have to agree on the agenda. And that makes any meeting between us that's a public meeting kind of stilted, because if we want to go in and talk about general issues, it's a lot harder to do because it's not in the agenda, and I haven't figured out a way, honestly, around that for the Open Meetings Act. Now, maybe I haven't been creative, and maybe the clerk and Ashley could help me, but it was stilted to try to hammer out the agenda, and that became an obstacle.
But again, I think I hate to say it, but let's not use agenda or not meeting or meeting as sort of the weapons of control. We should meet. I think we as two bodies should decide what the topics are we want to discuss at the next meeting. Let's take it off because that becomes a negotiation, prevents us from meeting. I feel that the public expects us, there's one topic that should be on every single agenda of our meeting, and that is Harbor Island. An update, sort of understanding the issues, together, so I can say that, and if the only other item we have for our first meeting is, look, we want to air some grievances so we can get down to some agreed behaviors that we're going to, sign up for together to make sure that we start to build that trust. I think that's a great starting point. And could we get to what the BLP wants then, mediation on a specific cost? Yeah, I think so, through that avenue. But immediately going to that, I think, is a bit premature.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, after listening to both Karen and Ryan, I think just a general meeting, and I'm not sure, I can't believe we can't come up with something that we don't have to go through individual agenda items. I can't believe we just can't call a meeting to talk about the relationship between the city council and the BLP.
We could do a joint meeting. We could label it like what we're labeling this now, a special work session, as long as we add a public comment period in it. And then, depending on what both boards want to talk about, like Ryan suggested, if you wanted to discuss, we can create what we did here, discussion, and we can add, discussing roles between city council and BLP. We can add general points like that. Whether or not you want a facilitator or a mediator at that first meeting to help guide discussion but there's ways we can do the agenda that are more broad, that still fit the Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
Thanks, Brent.
Well, I think that's probably a good first step for me anyways. Because I think if you get into, and I'm only talking personally, true mediation that ever occurs between two bodies are always done in private, let's be honest. Any contracts, Major League Baseball negotiations, so let's go through the whole list, is always done, privately. So I think that to try to do what they call true mediation in public, I think is going to be pretty tough. I think you really do have to have a general meeting to talk about. If it comes down to the issue of the BLP wanting their own attorney, which is, because that's where this kind of started in my mind anyways. They wanted their own attorney to be able to, before they even talked about moving ahead with Harbor Island. And we as a council voted that you have representation through the city attorney. Everything kind of fell apart from there, in my mind anyways. So if that's still the issue, I think you can do all the mediation you want. I don't think we're going to get past it.
Yeah. Okay. Mike?
That's just me.
Well, back in the day, we used to have regular meetings, and it was we had a little dinner to get together. Either the city council would sponsor it or the BLP would sponsor it, and the agenda was just for us to get together and air out. And when we started with Grand Landing, they were always hammering us. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And we just told them where we were, and it just sat down and we had a good conversation. I can't see why we need mediation right now. I don't foresee that as being the problem right now. I think good conversations between all of us would probably be the best thing to start out with, and then we could figure out. We had a facilitator at one time that came in and did it, which worked out very well for us. At the end of the day, it was when we were closing the plant. We had a facilitator come in. Yeah, we weren't both of us were at each other, but the thing at the end of the day, I could still say, hey, Jerry, how you doing? Nice day, and talk to each other. It's not where we were just arguing all the time. So I really think a good conversation, that's what I tried to do when I was setting up the meeting we were having. I just wanted us all to get together and have a conversation and see what was going on. What is our problems, where we at, and just hammer it out between us a little bit. That was what my whole intention was. What I wanted to do is just finally get to talk to each other. We didn't talk to each other. We were always talking between our city manager or their director, head in charge, Dave over there. So it was not the way we should be doing business. We should be talking amongst ourselves here. We shouldn't be sending a representative out there to do it. So I have to agree with you, Karen. I really think we need to get back into having our regular meetings first before we decide what what are you gonna mediate? I mean, first of all, we need a conversation. We don't have that conversation. So I think it's about time we start talking. I mean, we're human beings. I think we can talk to each other in a civil way. I mean, Mike is great. He's chairman over there. I carry on conversation. I sat down at the table at the little dinner we had over there for the chamber and that. It was very good. And so I think just conversation. We need to get back to that conversation. And then we'll get to the Harbor Island. Harbor Island, you're absolutely correct. We need to get onto that project. And they have to know exactly where HDR is. We got to know what we give updates, and we don't talk to each other. That's what those meetings are for, to get together so we can talk about things. You know, we just don't talk. That's the whole problem. We haven't talked in a long time, and it just really hurts me. I think as a community, that's what we should be doing.
Madam Mayor, can I just I want to camp on to what Councilor Fritz mentioned. You know, when you think about mediation, you know, it implies that there are actually two sides. I actually don't know what all the perspective of everybody on this, on a myriad of issues, and I don't know the perspective, because we haven't had that kind of open, transparent communication that Councilor Fritz is mentioning. So I don't want to presume to understand what issues they may have with City Council and what things we could be doing better. We should talk about that. I'm sure we can get a lot of, perspective about things we as council could and should be doing that can better foster, communication. But it all starts, as you said, Councilor Fritz, with us sitting down at the table. And I agree, I don't know that we need a facilitator or mediator for that. Madam Mayor, you did an excellent job in our one and only meeting with them. I would be willing to say.
I gotta tell you, I don't object to offering to meet with BLP on that basis, but it takes two, and they have to decide whether they want to meet with us on that basis. I'm gonna start with that. And then, that type of meeting, I don't really have any problem with Chairman Westbrook and me facilitating, but I do think we're going to have to get going forward to some kind of resolution, and I would rather do it sooner, vice later, about how to work out Harbor Island funding issues. We can't get to all of them, but it's not just funding either, it's also roles and responsibilities with regard to what's going on out at Harbor Island. Mm-hmm. And I think those issues are serious and need to be addressed, and I think it unlikely we are going to come to consensus. And if we're not going to come to consensus, I think a mediator could help us come to some common ground. So I don't object to meeting quarterly. I never objected to meeting quarterly, but it's pretty hard to schedule both boards for a particular time. That was the other thing. Every time we tried to schedule it, we couldn't get a quorum. So Monday nights, we know we have to be here every other Monday night, but other than that, it's a lot more difficult. So I can go back with Ashley to Mike Westbrook and talk to him about reinstituting quarterly meetings, but I really don't think, though I think quarterly meetings is a good step in the right direction, I don't really think it meets the spirit or letter of the HRC's recommendation. So if that's the marching orders you guys want to give me, Mike, go ahead.
You keep talking about, the funding of Harbor Island. We don't even know what it's going to be, because HDR even told us that they don't know where everything's coming from, what it is. We haven't had any reports back, and they said they won't have it till the end of the year. So before we even start worrying about how we're going to fund this thing, we don't even know how much we're going to fund or what we're going to fund or where it is, because we get a report back from HDR. I mean, you got to make sure you get, everything has to be in line. We're not getting them in line yet. We're still working on that process to get there. Yes, there's going to be we need funding. Yes, we do. We can still apply for grants and look for things that we can have to help us in the future, what's going to happen. But we don't even know exactly where it's at right now. HDR gave us that report telling us that, it's gonna be end of the year before they come up with,
The longer we wait, in my view,
oh, yes, the longer we wait.
the worse off we are.
I agree.
We need to move forward on these very concrete issues before, we need decisions before we have to act.
That's why we need to talk, Mayor.
I'm gonna adjourn the special council meeting, and I'm going to open up the regular city council meeting, and we will resume the special work session in a few minutes. Good evening, everyone. The regular city council meeting of the Grand Haven City Council of Monday, March 6, 2023 is hereby called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here.
McNally.
Here. The invocation tonight will be delivered by the Reverend Dr. Jared C. Kramer, St. John's Episcopal Church of Grand Haven. Would everyone please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O Lord, our governor, bless the leaders of our land, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to other nations of the earth. To the presidents and members of the cabinet, to governors of states, mayors of cities, and all in administrative authority, grant wisdom and grace in the exercise of their duties. To senators and representatives and to those who make laws in states, cities, and towns, give courage, wisdom, and foresight to provide for the needs of all our people and to fulfill our obligations to our community. To judges and officers of our courts, give understanding and integrity, that human rights may be safeguarded and justice served. We pray, O God, that you will teach our people to rely on your strength and to accept their responsibilities to their fellow citizens, that they may elect trustworthy leaders and make wise decisions for the well-being of our society, that we may serve you faithfully in our generation and honor your holy name. And Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we pray that you will send down upon those who hold office in this city of Grand Haven the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all, through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Okay, I would entertain a motion for the approval of the consent and regular agendas. Can I get such a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, discussion. I think we've got a couple things we're going to change in the agenda tonight. Go ahead.
I'd like to request that we postpone item 11B and 11E until the March 20th City Council meeting.
I'll need a motion and a second for that.
Can we get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second. Is there support? Motion by Cummins, second by
Me.
Fritz? Okay,
That was B as in boy and E as in Edward, right?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Very, very clear.
Let's get a, do we want to do, Maria, do all of the, because there's one more, we're going to add a, we're going to amend the agenda. There's a motion to amend the agenda by deleting those.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a motion that I would entertain for adding to the agenda as, I guess, 10, well, maybe 10, I'm going to call it 9B. The presentation of the recognition for Detective Beekman. Can I get a motion to that effect?
So move.
Support.
Support. Okay, so can we consider those motions as amendments to the agenda, the regular and consent agendas together?
Yes.
Okay.
Who were those, who motioned and seconded or supported the addition?
McLaughlin was the mover and
Low
second
support.
by Lowe. All right, so this is a motion to amend both our regular and consent agendas. Could you please call the roll?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Now I need a motion, which is actually, I need a motion to approve the consent and regular agendas as amended.
Yes. And that's already on the table.
It's on the table,
Yep.
well, as amended is on the table?
Yes, so now
Okay.
that we've made the amendments, we go back to the original motion.
That's fine. Any discussion? Could you please call the roll, Maria?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay. This time, I have the first call to the audience. Members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but may not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers. The chair recognizes Luann Worksma.
Hi, Luann Worksma, 319 South 2nd, Grand Haven. I'm here on behalf of the Human Relations Commission to ask you to respond positively to our request for an amendment to the ordinance that restricts the membership of the commission to only members of the city of Grand Haven. We have had some promising young leaders have to leave our commission because they could no longer afford to live nor find housing within the city limits of the city of Grand Haven. And as a commission whose mission it is to make Grand Haven a welcoming, inclusive, and accessible place, our work really extends beyond the borders of our city. And I think we've given it a lot of thought and have asked only that we be allowed to have 2 voting members who may not live right inside Grand Haven, but in an adjoining community, if in fact 2 conditions exist. One, that they own a business or work here, or otherwise have attributes and skills that really help us in our work, which you've seen a lot of lately. So I thank you for your consideration, and especially in light of our county losing its DEI office, I think the work of the Human Relations Commission is going to be more vital than ever, and I thank you for all of your support of it.
Thank you, Luann, and for your long service on the Human Relations Commission.
Good evening. Jerry Wetherell, 527 Butler. I'm going to deviate briefly from my prepared remarks. There's only 2 people in this building that were here 5 years ago in February, as it was Mike Fritz and myself, when some of the issues between the Board of Light and Power and City Council occurred. And it occurred because of an interpretation of the charter by 10 people, 5 council members, 5 BLP members. We've stumbled over that for 5 years. There is nothing else that's involved but that. You all know that I have been part of the BLP board for nearly 18 years. And you've heard me say before, there's never been a time when I believe City Council and the BLP have had such poor relationships. I am not kidding when I say that just one thing after another has occurred between these 2 bodies, and very frankly, it makes me very sad, because it didn't have to happen. Let me be very clear. The HRC, City Attorney Bolche, and others have all come to an agreement that discrimination against our director during the August 3rd BLP meeting based on gender was not proven. Now, that has been attacked by a number of people by that sheer statement. And unfortunately, it was not a pleasant evening. There were some of us that were there. Let's put this behind us and look forward. I'm proud to say Mike Westbrook has grabbed the reins by the bull, grabbed the bull by the horns, and is leading the BLP in the right direction. He is a man of reason. He wants to unify our two bodies at hand at working together on the issues affecting the residents of the city of Grand Haven and the ratepayers of the Board of Light and Power. I am asking that the city accept the HRC's recommendation and join the BLP. I'm going to scratch out my word mediation because I tend to agree with what's been said here tonight. I know it will be hard to get on the same page. I know better than all of you do. But believe me, we are up for the task. It is important to remember that the BLP is the gold standard in municipal power. We pride ourselves in providing affordable, reliable electric service to nearly 15,000 customers in the greater area. The BLP is responsible to all of those ratepayers, not just to the city of Grand Haven, and we remain committed, I'll go fast, ensuring superior levels of affordability, reliability, and sustainability for all of the customers, not just the city of Grand Haven. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry.
Good evening, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd like to start off again by going off script and thanking Karen for bringing up that topic and the need for a meeting, and Mike for supporting it, and I think all the council really supported it, and I think that's what you really need to do. And I agree that we shouldn't be jumping to a mediator. If you can't get by the just common talking, bring in somebody who's good, a facilitator. I mean, that's very, very common when you've got a group of different people in industry. You know, BP Amica, who I used to work with, they had a whole group of facilitators, and they would bring them in because, you know, even the people of the same job category from all over the world, they did not have same views, and, you know, they did a fantastic job bringing everybody together when there was those hiccups. So I think that's a fantastic idea. One other thing that I think is a great move is I saw the standard terms and conditions in the packet, and I know the mayor's brought that up, and council, I think, supports it. And these, again, are just standards that are used in private industry, and it's fantastic to see some of these best practices being adopted by the city, because what's going to come out of it is it's going to save time and it's going to save money. And it also takes people away from these negotiations, which I think are not open to the public a lot of the times. So it's great. Keep up the good work there. One other thing I want to talk about, which I think could use some work, is the way the 6-year capital plan was presented. I looked over the work packet, and all of a sudden, I started going over pages and pages and pages and pages of the capital plan, and out popped $65 million, $60 million for remediation, $5 million for redevelopment. I was shocked. I mean, I was shocked, because a project of that magnitude should be developed by a good process, a stage gate process. There should be reports generated. A scoping study should have been accompanying this 6-year plan and the $65 million. We should know what the scope considered for all the various projects. What are they? Are they capping? Are they a stabilization and capping? Are they digging it out? I don't know. I don't know who does. It doesn't sound like anybody.
Jim, I think that's a placeholder, and I think it's because we don't.
Can I finish,
Yep.
Mayor?
Yep.
So the questions I had: how were the costs developed? What's the range of the projects? How many? What is in each scope? And what's the cost range and accuracy for the costs represented? I would suggest the city adopt a stage gate process for your projects. A $60 million project, or 65, I should say, in any company would have a full-time person running the project from even this stage. And typically in a stage gate, you would have the scoping, feasibility, engineering studies, and you'd move on, you'd have a report for each. It would be open to to be debated and talked about by all the stakeholders. And I don't see that happening. So I would like to see that the city adopt such a process.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Good evening. Mike Westbrook, 423 Lafayette. As Chair of the Board of Light and Power, I'm here to show you that we as a board are taking the findings of the Human Relations Commission professionally and seriously. The entire BLP organization completed implicit bias training this past month in February. Additionally, the board and BLP leadership will be participating in the Open Meetings Act and Parliamentary Procedures training this month. All this stems from an incident when another person chaired the BLP, not myself. But we as a board and the leadership of the BLP are using Elizabeth Pell's complaint as an opportunity for growth. We are taking the Commission's finding as a lesson for all of us to do better. Now is the time for us all to put that complaint in the past and become forward-thinking in our duties. I call on you, City Council, tonight to uphold your end in this matter. The HRC has recommended mediation between two bodies, and our board voted 5-0 unanimously to go forward and initiate discussions between the PLP and City Council on how we structure a mediation process, not facilitation. Communication hasn't really worked in the past. I appreciate your speech about unity tonight, Mike, but it really feels like mediation is what we need. I recently talked with Mayor McNally about the board's willingness to enter into mediation with the council. I reviewed the mediation process, what that could look like with the mayor and city manager. And now I'm asking that the city council to work with us so we can become more cohesive in our jobs of serving our community through your decision tonight. I believe it's on the agenda a little later. In the end, the ball is in your court. I'd ask you to join the BLP board and accept the challenge given to both entities to set aside our differences and move forward with what I see as the only viable option to how we decide roles and responsibilities and payment on Harbor Island. This will help our community see us as leaders that they elected and will help us solve our differences when it comes to the Harbor Island issues. Last thought. It's important to recognize that 3 of the 5 of you have election before you coming up this November. Let's show your voters tonight who are watching that you're working on their behalf to resolve these tough issues. Now is not a time for facilitation. We've had a lot of talks. We've had breakdowns in communication. The Human Relations Commission has recommended mediation, and I strongly ask you to consider that tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Wait a minute, Shar, are you next?
No, I just have a quick little.
Okay, good.
Just a little
Yep.
quick announcement. A couple of weeks ago, I was here to give an overview of the progress of our rebrand, and I missed one of our really, really important partners. So I wanted to take a moment and just give a shout out to Central Park Players. They have been an organization that's been in our facility since the inception of time. And they do 5 performances a year, and they have a 2-week summer camp that they do at our facility, and they are completely 100% volunteer run, from selecting the plays that they're going to do, to the casting, to the set building, to the lighting and the sound. So I just wanted to make sure that they got a shout out tonight, and they do have a play coming up. It is May 17th, 18th, and 19th, and it's called Dogs. And you can look at their Facebook page or on our website to find more information about ticket pricing and times. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Shar. Justin.
Hi, Mayor, members of the council.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. Justin Roebuck. I'm at 27 Wall Street in Zeeland, but I'm coming to you as your county clerk and register of deeds tonight. Just basically to touch base and say hi. It's been a little while since we've been out and about at some of our city council meeting and township board meetings, but annual report season is upon us, and so we've completed our 2022 annual report for our office. You can find that on our website at miottawa.org/clerk. A lot of information there in a 56-page report. I'm not going to bother you with a lot of those details, but I will say 2022 was a very busy cycle for us. It was a busy year in our court record side. We had about 130,000 court record documents, a little over 40,000 documents on the Register of Deeds side, which was a little bit less than typical, as we're kind of seeing some of the effects of the interest rate affect property transactions as well. But we remain focused on our mission, which is helping people and encouraging their trust in government. I believe strongly in those things, and transparency and trust, and we're working hard to do those things. Obviously, there's a couple of ways that we directly interface with the city, and that is one, in our property records side with the Laredo system. It's basically our land records system where we are interfacing with your BS&A and making sure that you have all the correct property data in terms of transfer and sale values. And the other significant way is elections, of course, and we are consistently and constantly partnering with Maria. She's been amazing to work with. We're very grateful for her and her whole team. And as we really just do our very best to run efficient, transparent elections, we have a significant change in our election process, which really started with Proposal 2 of 2022 last November. A lot of change is really on the horizon for the next federal election cycle. And one of those big things is 9 mandatory days of early voting. We have the opportunity to collaborate in certain ways on that piece. We're certainly having conversations with Maria and with all of our clerks and local units of government as to how we can best help at the county level with that. And so that's one of the other ways we're working hard on that.
Did any funding come with that, Justin?
Well, that's a great question, Mayor, and I think that a couple of the pieces of funding were actually built right into the constitutional language, particularly Dropbox funding, postage, which is now required, return postage on everything. So those are the two fundamental pieces that were built into the constitutional language. We are working hard at the legislative level to really make our legislature aware, frankly, of the need at the local level. I mean, the county, there's a couple of impacts to the county, but the big need, honestly, is for local jurisdiction funding. We need that funding, and 9 days of early voting is a heavy lift financially for our communities. And so we continue to pursue that. I'm hopeful, though. I think we have a legislature that's willing to kind of, see what they can do, and we're going to continue to advocate for that.
Thank you.
So yeah, just a quick update from our office, and thanks for everything that you guys do. This is important work, and we're really grateful to have you guys as partners at the county level as well. So.
Can you answer a question from
Oh,
Councilmember
yeah.
McLaughlin?
Actually, I just want to thank you and your staff. I'd never run for election before, and your staff did an unbelievable job to guide us through that process, especially the financial statements, as you can imagine. But I wanted just to publicly say thank you, because it really helped us out to get through that arduous process sometime.
Yeah. Well, that means a lot. We appreciate it, and customer service.
I'd like to thank you honestly for your broader work throughout the county, here supporting our city, but also your broader work throughout the county, particularly the security and the integrity of our elections is, I think, of paramount interest to everyone. So I know you do an exceptional job, and I'd just like to recognize it and thank you for it.
Appreciate that. Those are very kind words. We're honored to be able to do it.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Okay, moving on. An individual who serves this city for almost 29 years deserves the utmost respect. But anyone who carries a gun and a badge and who dedicates her life to protecting all of us, but especially the most vulnerable in our community, who uses her brain as well as her brawn to investigate and solve serious violent felonies, that person deserves our gratitude, our respect, and our sincere best wishes on her retirement and her future. I'd like to ask Detective Dana Beekman to join me at the podium for a small token of recognition.
Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. I'm gonna need to use my glasses, which is a little
Well, I was
embarrassing.
just thinking the same thing.
City of Grand Haven, resolution of recognition to Dana Beekman. Whereas Detective Dana Beekman has faithfully served the residents and visitors of Grand Haven for 28 years and 10 months. And whereas Detective Beekman has distinguished herself as a member of the Grand Haven Department of Public Safety through excellence in the delivery of law enforcement, fire suppression, and emergency medical services. And whereas Detective Dana Beekman earned GHDPS Officer of the Year honors in 2005, and whereas she was promoted to the rank of detective in 2020 due to her skill and determination in investigating felony cases, and whereas Detective Beekman has conducted many investigations involving serious felony cases leading to the arrest of the suspects and justice for the victims. And whereas Detective Dana Beekman has dedicated her entire career to seeking justice for the victims of child and sexual abuse, and whereas Detective Beekman has always looked out for those who can't protect themselves and has always gone beyond the call to provide comfort and counseling to victims, and whereas Detective Dana Beekman's extraordinary efforts have resulted in the protection of victims from further abuse, the restoration of families, and a safer community, now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of all of the people of Grand Haven, the mayor and city council hereby thank and congratulate Dana Beekman for her 28 years and 10 months of selfless public service and wish her a very long and joyful retirement. Signed, Catherine McNally, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'd just like to say it has been a wonderful career. Never did I want to work anywhere but the city of Grand Haven. I thank our government, past and present, for your support of public safety, because without the support of the people in this room and those that are listening live stream, we wouldn't be able to do our jobs and bring people to justice. So thank you. The men and women of the Grand Haven Public Safety Department are phenomenal and will continue to do so. And very proud of my career, and again, the city. It's community members, partners, friends, family. So thank you. Thank you. It's my last week.
Dana, I wanted to also thank you for your service. Last time you and I saw each other, we were sitting on a roof. But thank you for your service. I really. Yeah.
I'll see you at the Tiger game.
Yes, I'll be ready.
I'm sorry, we're good.
All right, let's see here. At this point, we've got a presentation on the first draft of the fiscal year 2023-24 capital plan. I'm guessing
Your Honor,
by...
Do we have any continuation of the work session,
Oh,
or are we all
sorry.
done?
Emily, sit down, you're right. We're going to revert to the work session and finish up. Okay. Has anybody got anything additional they want to say? And is the consensus here that you think the way to start this is, rather than formal mediation or informal mediation, because there are levels of it, a meeting between the two boards?
Yeah, just start out.
Yeah.
Then we can go into mediation if we need it, but I really think we should sit down and talk to each other.
Yeah, and I would just want to say, I want to thank Chairman Westbrook and Vice Chair Witherell for coming here and exchanging, but I think you demonstrate exactly why we need to come together and just have an open discussion. I honestly am not aware, I don't know of all, I do feel there are a lot of hard feelings for various things, but a lot of the communications have not happened in an open meeting, and people are reacting to things that haven't happened in an open meeting. And so when you say that we've tried it doesn't work, the last time our two boards met was January of 2022, which was 14 months ago. And I don't think I can look to the public and say we've tried everything. when we haven't even gotten together to have, a discussion. So I want to thank you for coming forward for all the things, taking the steps from the HRC, and I am not opposed to getting to the point of the legal mediation that you need. I just think the first step is us having an open meeting and kind of getting all those things on the table so we can progress towards the things, because I don't disagree with the mayor. That's might be where we're at that issue, but the only way we begin to get that is, start by having a conversation. So I would just ask that you consider that. And one other thing is, Mayor McNally knows I'm a big fan of Braver Angels, and it's something that some council members heard when we went to our Michigan Municipal League CapCon conference, and it's really an organization that tries to bring different points of view together, whether that's politics, whether that's just, different sides. And I just want to read some of the Braver Angels way is, we state our views freely and fully without fear. We welcome opportunities to engage with those with whom we disagree. We treat people who disagree with us with honesty and respect. We seek to disagree accurately, avoiding exaggeration and stereotypes. We look for common ground, and I think we have a lot of common ground, where it exists, and if possible, find ways to work together. We believe that all of us have blind spots, and none of us are not worth talking to. We believe that in disagreements, both sides share and learn. Neither side is teaching the other or giving feedback on how to think or say things differently. Our work ethic is citizen leadership. We are many volunteers held up by the community. So I just offer that as just, a way for us to sort of a path forward for your consideration. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm going to go on record as saying I'm certainly willing to try this, but I think that it will not move us forward much. But I'm willing to give it a shot, and of course it requires us to go back to the BLP and request a meeting, then try to schedule one where everyone can meet and go forward. Okay, I'm going to end the special work session, go back to regular meeting. And now I'm going to ask Emily Green to come forward with a first draft of the fiscal year 2023-2024 capital plan.
Correct. Emily Green, Finance Director. So this is the first draft of the capital plan. Bring it to you generally in February or March every year. Is for your consideration. Staff and council are going to review and discuss this further at the budget work session, which we are trying to set a date and get a date to set in April. The overview shows the original budget in the approved fiscal year 22-23 budget document, as well as the amended and projected amounts for the upcoming budget. And so that's just kind of an overview of each of the funds and departments. And then the summary page, if you click to the next one, thank you. The summary page details the totals for each fund and department, along with information for future fiscal years 24 through 2029. This assists in the planning for long-term capital needs and helps identify projects for possible outside funding sources. The departments put this together just so that you as council and the citizens know that there are projects that each of the departments are looking at and totals. This will be a discussion. This changes always, just this year I've moved several things back a year just because it's not feasible to do that in the next year. But they are projects that are upcoming, and we feel it's our responsibility to bring this information to you. On the pages following the summary, the department-specific projects are listed with budgeted totals, anticipated outside funding, and the total project cost for each fund and department. Staff has been looking for outside funding areas we've been very lucky and very hard at work to find outside funds to help get these projects completed.
Emily, can I ask a real quick question? Is there a central clearinghouse for where we can look for grants, or do we have to go through multiple, I mean, I've seen some of the things that Ashley's received from federal and state legislators saying these programs are now open.
Right.
But is there any place central that we can hunt, or is it really, it's really a treasure hunt?
I'm new to the position,
Okay,
so I'm
fair
not
enough.
sure that there is, but I do know, the state sends notices out, the federal government sends notices out. Staff, Derek is going to conferences and meetings with different municipalities. So I think I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that staff is works hard to find outside funding.
And it is a little bit of a treasure hunt. There are some websites that we monitor, obviously, fairly regularly, whether it be the DNR, Eagle, so forth. But as far as other grant opportunities, there are a couple different website options that have a number of collected funding potential opportunities that are more subscription-based. We don't necessarily have a subscription, so we're really just monitoring as we're aware and conversationally with outside organizations. A lot are referral-based.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Sorry, Emily, didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. It's a good question. So we're continuing to look at this. I had a conversation with the department just today, and this is kind of it's the first draft, and it will be changing. And then I assume that when we discuss it at the work session as well, we may have changes at that time.
Okay, people got questions, folks?
I just got one question. Something just stood out to me, and I just want to understand, and I know this is still in discussion in first draft.
Yep.
Under the public safety motor pool, it has new garage. It says annex sale, and then $600,000. Can someone explain that one to me just real quick so I can get my arms around that?
Yep, so presently the DPS garage is attached to the annex facility. Rather than figuring out the logistics of separating that, part of the intent of sale of the property would be to rebuild a lesser structure with a portion of the sales and part of that also being taken, I believe, from motor pool. Again, that would be a portion of the sale revenue, but not including the $30,000 a year or so that we're expending on that facility just in maintenance and upkeep. So longer term benefit.
Okay, thank you.
And it's, very preliminary, but
Yeah, we don't.
we see that it's a possibility, so we wanted to put it on there.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else? Ryan?
Yeah, and I think it's good that folks can see not just next year's plans for our capital budget, but we have a lot of capital needs, from trucks to street maintenance to our boardwalk, the Harbor Island, our parks. It's extensive, and so it's helpful that there's at least a long-term planning document and looking at, okay, which year may we be looking at this? What do we need to start applying for to hopefully fund it grant-wise? And I think our team's done a phenomenal job over the years with being successful with grant applications and leveraging those grants. Certainly we have some matches involved with that, but the more we can leverage those other funding sources, the better. So, this is a good, full picture. Obviously, we're going to be looking at, okay, what do we want to fund in the more immediate term? What are our absolute maybe needs, as we try to also look at what our other budgetary pressures are. I'm sure we're going to definitely have more discussion on that as it comes up. I think one thing that I have found the last couple budget cycles, and same thing with this one, is so the draft capital plan kind of includes, okay, here's our amended budgets. It's very hard to follow what was taken out from what we approved last year. So I can see where you're looking to amend, for the remainder of this year, what the budget is. Certainly, it's easy to see what you're, hoping to fund next year, but it'd be easier if we had a line that showed, okay, what did we approve last year? All right, this is what we're looking to amend it to, and then obviously this is what we want to fund next year. So if we had one extra column next to the, to the left of amended budget that showed where we started at.
So, and actually, if you look are you saying in the details?
In the details,
okay,
yep.
Got it. Because
Yeah,
in the overview, we do have that original budget for 22-23, but not in the detail.
Exactly,
Sure.
You're spot on, and that's what led to some difficulty, because I saw, for example, that our original budget, you know, I mean, our major street fund, you know, amended budget's gone up dramatically, and so I didn't I think I have an idea of what that is, and we'll have some discussion about that, I'm sure in more detail, why that's gone up so dramatically, and I'm sure certain things are hit in certain years versus, you know, what it was expected. You know, same thing with the you know, city water fund, so if we're able to follow it, like I know, for example, okay, city website, maybe we funded that this year, but now it's being pushed off to a future year, or we had to move up, you know, funding for boardwalk maintenance or whatever it is. It just kind of helps follow, at least for me, and support those upper numbers there. And then I think, Mayor, if you're willing, it'd be beneficial if perhaps our city manager could kind of explain, and our finance director, why the Harbor Island estimates, the best estimates that we at least have at this point, without getting into more detail that we need, why that's been added.
Yeah. Do you want to cover that, Ashley?
Sure. So at this point in time, as our public timeline has kind of laid out, we are in the midst of our PFAS sampling. We're in about round 2 of 8, so the 8th one will wrap up the end of this calendar year. At that time, we'll have a better idea of the condition of the island, as well as really the alternatives that will be presented to us for remediation by our engineer. So at this point in time, given the time of year in comparison to our fiscal year, we're looking to place essentially placeholder within our budget to help us prepare for anticipated costs. Our engineer, again, very preliminary because we don't have the big picture, has provided a rough estimate that we could use when we're in conversations with, say, our legislators. And that is roughly $40 to $80 million to address the PFAS. And that is a range of remediation options that could be anything from capping to digging to a combination or hybrid. Again, it's a very conservative effort right now to identify a cost without having the direction for remediation in a direction that would be Eagle approved at this point nonetheless. So for our planning purposes and for the purpose of asking for funding from outside sources, we identified a range and then put a placeholder in our budget about mid-range.
Thank you, Ashley. Good idea, Ryan. Okay. That it, Emily? Anybody got anything else? Thank you very much.
I'd just like to say thank you for doing this. This is one of the things, you know, putting in some estimates of the less knowable at this point, because the only way that we can fiscally plan and anticipate, given, you know, some of the big ticket items that are coming our way, things like the pension, that doesn't show up on the balance sheet, right? That's a footnote in the financials. So we don't see that big unfunded pension liability. We've got these other liabilities relative to Harbor Island, which is why putting in some kind of large estimate, you know, some kind of reasonable estimate, even if it's a range, helps us make better decisions going forward. So I thank you for doing your best guesstimate to get some, you know, numbers in there, realizing that we won't have the specific, you know, plans and a specific number until all the testing is completed. So thank you.
And again, just to add to that, and I think I've used the DNR as an example of this in prior conversations, but a lot of outside funding sources want to see that project within your planning documents, whether that be an allocated cost or just simply an identification that that is a project in your plans that you are anticipating. So for example, DNR is less likely to approve a park plan if say a improvement to Saluka Field isn't within our 5-year recreation plan. It adds extra weight to that, and I think we've heard from a lot of our legislators as we've been communicating with them that they want something to point to say that this is a funding that the city of Grand Haven is anticipating and is on their radar. So
I just want to say thank you for saying that, Ashley. I was just going to bring that up because since I've been on here, we've had opportunities for different recreational things to do here in town. And it was in our 5-year plan, and because we had it there when we applied for the grant, we were very, very successful of getting that money to help us out because we had it planned out ahead of time. Anytime, like the 6-year plan, it's like, it's up there, you know, somewhere, but we move that plan around every year because sometimes those things do not make it to our budget for that year because we can't afford it for one thing, or maybe it's not, something more important comes up, but we still have it in the plan, we have a chance to get a grant and get some money from outside sources, so I'm just glad you explained that to people out there, that they understand how that works, because there's a lot of things going on.
And that number will certainly be modified when we do have more specifics from our engineer.
Absolutely, but as long as we have something there and we have something there for them to go by, it helps us out to get that money, so thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Emily, you want to read it? Or I'm sorry, Maria, will you read it for us?
Yes. Item A, approve the bills memo in the amount of $1,089,175.81. Item B, approve the terms of the Airport Rescue Grant Agreement, Sub-Grant Number 3 GM-13222, and the amount of $32,000 to offset operational expenses incurred set forward from November 16th, 2020, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item C, approve a one-year license agreement with Samuel Emmons from April 1, 2023 to October 31, 2023 to operate a charter fishing business from the Grand Haven Municipal Marina and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary documents.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So move, okay, or support.
Motion by Lowe, support from Fritz. Discussion?
Can I have just one quick question? On D, with the charter fishing business, he's offering 5,500. I think that's what the number is, if I look back. Somebody else offers 9,000. Can somebody help me how we determine how that works? I mean, why can't we just set a rate? A first-year rate?
Sure, Shar Say, Community Affairs Manager for the City of Grand Haven. That's certainly an option that you can direct us to take. We've not done it that way before, but it's certainly something that can be changed in the future. We're in the process, I mean, in this situation, it is the same process that it's been the whole 6 years that I've done this job. Lots of other places do it the way that you're recommending, that we put in the minimum opening bid that you want it to be, and then your annual rate after that.
Okay, thank you.
I kind of agree with Councilmember McLaughlin, just on the theory that we seem to be giving three similarly situated charter agreements to three different individuals, and they're all paying different amounts of money for them. And it's not really a competitive bid process, because the first one we looked at, there were two bidders and we didn't take the high bid. So we took the more qualified bid, and I'm okay with that. But I would think that maybe it would be good to look at, you could call it a minimum bid, or you could just call it, to me, you could call it a fee. Yeah. You know, this is what it costs the first year to get into a charter slip, because it does seem unusual in the way
the
that
guy that paid 9,000 saying, "Damn, I could have got it for 5,500."
Right.
You know.
Right. I guess. So, Kevin, the question is, do you want to make a motion?
No.
Okay. We're gonna move through this. We're gonna move this through, but maybe looking into the future, look at what's a fair value for that based on historic use and assign that as a value. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thanks.
Are the agreements coming up soon?
Yes.
Right, so we're going to be negotiating rates soon anyway, right?
We are. So we have a meeting the last Monday of March with the Charter Captain Association, and we'll begin that process so that by the time their contracts expire for 2023, we'll be ready for another 5-year contract. We'll bring that forward to City Council. That will be the new person that's taking over what I've done previously, Cole Bowditch. So you will be seeing that coming soon.
And typically, Shar, they pay less in subsequent years than they do to get in. Is that true?
Yes, that has been the practice.
It's interesting. Okay. All right, there's a motion on the floor. Maria, would you please call the roll?
Lowe,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to item 12A of new business. Would you read it for us, please, Maria?
Consideration by City Council of an introductory resolution to amend Chapter 20, Section 20-2 of the City of Grand Haven Code of Ordinances by amending residency requirements for Human Relations Commission members. Human Relations Commission recommends approval. Administration recommends approval.
So move.
And second.
Anybody got any discussion but me? I got some discussion. I support the principles in it, but I have some qualms about the way it was worded. I think that paragraph 1 and paragraph 3 are linked in a way that inserting paragraph 2 in between them, statutorily, it's not written the way it should be.
Yeah.
So
That
what are our
is-
options, Maria?
That is how it currently reads in the charter. They're separated like that. If council wants to amend the recommendation to reorganize that, you are allowed to do that.
Okay, I guess when I looked at the charter, most of what became the paragraph 3 was in paragraph 1. It just was, it was rolled into paragraph 1. And I'm sorry to raise this here. I went through it on Saturday and went, this is, I don't have it in front of me. I had 3 copies of it this morning, but basically paragraph 1 talks about the,
Your
Pardon?
copy?
yeah. Thanks, Maria. Pardon? Paragraph 1 talks about what the membership is. Paragraph 2 talks about the student members. And then paragraph 3 says each such member, the way I looked at, when I looked at the charter, the paragraph 3 was really linked with paragraph 1 because each such member shall be appointed for a 3-year term, but it's got, in addition, anyway, I support the principles, but I have qualms about the language.
I'm pulling up the current language right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not going to be able to read it on the on the overhead, I can tell you that.
I can read.
So, Your Honor, just so I understand you, so you don't, the content and the language is not a problem, but the ordering of which you have some concerns? The structure and
of
ordering.
yes, the structure and order, yes. I do not have any problems. I sat with Luann and we talked at length about why this is a good idea, and I trust her judgment, and I believe that changing it probably will serve the city in a variety of ways, because I think we may find people who live outside the city but will become passionate members of our Human Relations Commission, and I think 2 is not a bad start. I like the idea of eliminating non-voting members because, and that's something the Human Relations Commission recommended, and honestly, one of my first acts as mayor was I came in and I was asked to just basically confirm a nomination that had already been reviewed by Mayor Manetza, and I'm like, sure, that's fine. He's already interviewed this member, and there's a spot for her, and I did it, and it turned out I appointed her unknowingly into a non-voting member spot. She was a city resident, and she went into she didn't know she was going into a non-voting membership spot, and it hurt her feelings, and it blew up. And I kind of went, well, that didn't work very well. So the non-voting members, I think, creates 2 classes of members on that board, and when you're talking about a Human Relations Council, I think that's a bad idea. And the other 2 changes that are, one is that someone who starts a term while they live in the city, who's appointed to a term while they live in the city, can complete the term if they happen to move across the bridge or out into the township. I got no problem with that. Or with the potential for bringing two. I guess I would like to make a motion to postpone this.
Mayor,
Go ahead, Ryan, go ahead.
Before you, I mean, I don't have any objection if the order is different. That doesn't bother me. I mean, we have to have 2 readings on this, correct? Could we change the order between now and a second reading and be okay so we can
You
move
can
this?
amend it now if you wanted to, and that amended version is what would be presented at the second reading.
I don't know that I can do that from here, Maria. I understand what you're saying, but I provided what I thought was a better way to organize it. But I was, frankly, I talked to Ashley and I said, who writes these? Because they're not going, we're passing ordinances that aren't being reviewed by the city attorney. So, go ahead.
Your Honor, I was just going to comment on it and just sort of as feedback. I don't have any issues with the content, and I think it's very well thought through by the HRC. I know it's not uncommon to look at the ordinance, though, and just make changes to certain parts and not look at overall structure. So I am okay with it as is. I'm also not opposed to if this matters, means it's very concerning to you, Your Honor. I'm okay with, but I just want the spirit of it to be approved and move forward. So
I agree, probably go with the first reading, we can have the changes be done by the next reading if you want to rearrange it,
Can we,
that'd be a lot easier.
is that allowed, Maria? We can do the first reading and then change the text and do the second reading? Okay.
Yes. Do you want me to read, because I have that second paper of your edits? Do you want me to read that?
No, I think
or
it'd be
just-
better to give these guys a paper version of it and
Okay.
see whether they like it better or they don't like it better. I mean, it might be we go through the first version and that would be fine. And you look at the version I'm proposing and you'll go, yeah, I like the first version better. I'm okay with that too.
Okay.
So I would say if we're allowed to amend the language before the second reading, I'm okay with moving this through.
And I will say too, you are correct about how the original charter section reads now.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, and I think your point, if we should make sure that any ordinance that comes before us, certainly the city attorney's reviewed that before it comes to us to make sure that we don't have any, not just language issues, but that everything is consistent with our charter and throughout our ordinances, and it's,
I agree 100%. I'm not a lawyer.
I am, and I struggled.
So
Ron was present at the meeting that the HRC voted on these changes.
Which is good, yeah. I'm not trying to, I'm just, my theory is each one of us adds value in a different way. This is one way I think I can add value, so I'm not trying to get in the way of anything, but I think we can maybe make it a little better. That's all I'm saying.
So with that, then I would entertain a motion to amend the presented ordinance update.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, now I'm confused. I thought we were going to, we can pass
that's right.
this, we can pass this ordinance as it is, and by the second reading, we can amend it, and everyone can review a copy of the proposed amendment, maybe compare it with what the first version was. Is that not what we said, Maria?
I thought you meant you were going to amend it tonight, and then that
No.
amended version is what you wanted to see for the next meeting.
My question to you was, can we go with the original amendment proposed by the HRC?
Mm-hmm.
Reorganize the text for the second reading and pass the second one, or do we have to twice pass the same language? I don't think it's fair to ask these guys to vote on something they haven't seen, and I don't think it's fair to ask them to read it here, because frankly, it deserves more scrutiny than that. So can we just pass this one And in the interim, between now and the next meeting, when we would have a second reading, correct it, send out a proposed corrected version, and then pass that as the second reading. Is that legit or not? If it's not,
I would say because of the extent of the, granted, it isn't necessarily changing the meaning, but I would say because of the extent of the restructuring of the proposed amendment, that we postpone this until the next meeting. Or you can just vote no on it for now, and then we can present it back for our March 20th meeting.
Can I ask a second question? If council approved this tonight, and then the mayor made some changes and got it to us for review at the second meeting, we could change that second reading to a first reading of her revised language, right? Or if we all
Or
decided
pass
it
the
was
second
fine,
one.
or pass the second one, but that way we wouldn't, I'm just offering that as an option.
I'm not our attorney, but my advice would be the cleanest way to do that is to either postpone it or vote this version down now, and we will present a cleaner edited version at our next meeting.
I think we've made amendments on the second reading. Ryan, I think you've been on council with me, we've done that, where we passed the first one and we had some changes done, and it came back to the second reading, and we passed it on the second reading. But we passed
but sometimes, Mike, they're minor changes, and this isn't a change in the, this is a change in the order and the structure, and it's not a minor change in that regard.
Is it
I
a
think
change in the
Maria's right,
language, or-
frankly, and in the absence of, I think our options tonight are approve, but I hate to say it, but I'm gonna vote no. Postpone or disapprove, and I would like us to postpone it for 2 weeks and get a better version of it, if we're gonna make this an ordinance in our city.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, one other question. Lastly, I'm just assuming, maybe I ask Luann, is postponing this hurting you in any way? Because if not, I think we're all open to, you know.
That would just put us to, April 3rd, something like that for the approval.
Would that hurt any of your, current members?
We've gone a long time.
Okay.
Struggling to get a quorum, so one
Okay.
more month.
That doesn't mean I can't make appointments in the meantime. I think we can,
Correct.
I'm gonna interview everybody I got on the list in the next 2 weeks and get them right.
Now that you've let me talk for that middle paragraph, it was really interesting to me how antiquated the language was, because it said Grand Haven Senior High School, and we haven't had a Grand Haven Senior High School since 1996.
Mhm.
Junior and the senior high school, and it didn't even include the possibility of a student from Central. So we were just trying to make our language more.
I like that you did that. Okay. We've got a motion on the floor to postpone, vote on this. Is there a second?
There you
Second by Fritz. Any further discussion? Okay. Maria, would you please call the roll?
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay. New business item B. Maria, would you read it?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve the conversion of Franklin Avenue to a two-way traffic between Harbor Drive and Fifth Street.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So move.
Second?
Motion by McLaughlin, second by Cummins. Discussion?
First of all, I want to thank Ashley for giving us the history of this, of the discussions that have taken place back years and years. It really helped me to kind of take a look at it, the pros and cons as was presented. I think the thing that stuck out with me the most was when they started to talk about how it could slow traffic down by making it a two-way. I know we've talked about it would be easy access coming off the beach to go to the parking lots. I think that's all I think that's why I'm going to support this, this resolution. I think it's important to give, to be able to open this up. I think it will, at the end of the day, be safer. I know there was some comment about emergency vehicles and how they were going to get to the beach. I think I think it's something that you can take into consideration, but it shouldn't be something that would stop us from doing this. So I'm going to support this, for those reasons. Thank you.
Anybody else? Right? Mike?
I'm dead against it. I see too many close calls, and as a matter of fact, I've witnessed a death of a skateboarder. It happened right in front of me, right by the Elks there. And I tell you what, by going two ways and having them, those hills are for kids, and that they come down on their skateboards and having it two ways, it's going to be hard for them to see one. Bad enough for them to come down and look one way, but then they have to see traffic coming from both ways. I don't want that on my mind. I've already seen the picture of a person being hit by a car. I tell you, it's not the best thing to see. It really bothers me a lot. Yet today, my wife and I happened to be right there when it happened. And I think this is going to create a more dangerous situation for our youth and for anybody. Even this was an adult. I mean, his life was taken on this street. And if you're going two-way street, I'm telling you what, it's going to be so much harder for them. They come down those hills so fast on their skateboards. And to look both ways is going to be a very, very difficult situation, even on their bikes, skateboards, you name it, whatever. It is just unsafe. I'm not for it. I won't be for it. And I just don't want that on my conscience. I've already seen one happen already, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen somebody get hit by a car. It is not a pleasant view. It just is disturbing, and when you can't do anything. I tried to yell and scream, tell him to stop. I seen the car. I seen it, and it's terrible. So I'm definitely dead against two-way street there. It's not conducive for us. I tell you what, we want to make this a more pleasant town, and if you want to open it up and have visitors come in here, it's going to make it more dangerous for them. I'm sorry. I will not support this. I can't, in my conscience.
Okay, Mike,
I've been a witness of it.
Karen?
You seconded the motion, I just wanted to.
Karen? You got anything?
Yes, I do. I wanted to
I'd like
listen
you to go first, please.
I'd like to listen to my fellow council member.
Yeah. Karen, could you go first, please?
If that's what you would prefer.
Please.
Yeah, I will. But I will want to listen to what Councilmember Cummins has to say. I want to thank you for putting all that information together and understanding the history. I had not known about that. But in the past 15 months, City Council has spent a lot of time discussing and understanding our parking downtown. And during the course of those conversations, citizens as well as downtown merchants alike have raised questions with individual council members about Franklin Avenue and why it is a one-way street, particularly when the vast majority of our downtown parking is off of Franklin. That said, I realize this is a difficult conversation for those who live on Franklin, as the mayor does, or a few blocks from downtown, because they are not faced with some of the parking and navigational issues downtown because they're able to walk very quickly, unlike 90% of our residents. As the mayor knows, I was against the proposed mixed-use parking structure on First and Franklin and stood with her on that. I'm also opposed to paid parking downtown because I don't think that's in the best interest of all of our constituents. But I think the issue of making Franklin a two-way street is worthy of council having this consideration. And I think looking through the historical documents, it's clear that it's been something that's come up before. A town of our size and for navigational, purposes, it really makes that a little bit questionable. But I believe that we need to thoughtfully discuss and deliberate on this topic to ensure that we're listening to one another and that we're understanding all sides of the issue. And we should do that in a way that demonstrates some sensitivity to those who who live on Franklin like Mayor McNally, because, you know, change is not easy for any of us. And when it's happening right in front of your house, I understand that there can be, you know, resistance to that change. But it is our fiduciary responsibility as council members to represent all of the cities of all, you know, all the citizens of all precincts, and do what's in the best interest of all, the greater good, not just a few individuals. I guess, in my experience, in my long consulting experience with some of the largest and most successful companies in the world, I can tell you that companies are no different than our own city. You know, sometimes you do something the same way forever without challenging why you do it that way. Originally, there was a very good reason why, and logical reason why it was done. But more often than not, the original reason for creating something like a one-way street, it may no longer exist. And yet we keep having it, and are unwilling to look at changing it, just because that's the way it's always been done. So I think, you know, I guess in closing, I feel like this is a legitimate thing, legitimate resolution for us to consider. We don't need to rush through it, but I do think we have a duty to consider it as council.
Ryan?
Yeah, I think this is definitely worthy of consideration as well. Clearly this has been looked at and studied pretty extensively going back to the early 90s, and I think this is kind of a perfect example of government will study something and it gets put on a shelf, and then it gets a little dusty, and it gets picked up off the shelf and maybe study a little bit more. So I'm not sure that a ton of extra study is really going to show anything different than what's been, you know, shown in the past through an extensive amount of research. And I think that it seems to me from looking at you know, the prior documents that a lot of the, you know, kind of urban planners that have looked at this over time looked at kind of the size of our city, and the recommendation seemed to be that, you know, a two-way Franklin would be better for our downtown. I think as we have made a decision to close the first block of Washington, when you look at the beach traffic coming towards downtown, I think it makes most sense for them to take a right onto a two-way Franklin and see what is available parking wise in those parking lots. And then, you know, if you're going down a two-way Franklin and you're like, okay, these couple lots or few lots, maybe they're full. Maybe that courthouse lot actually ends up being utilized a whole heck of a lot more than what it is right now, as folks are coming down a one-way Franklin going past the courthouse parking lot, which has a tremendous amount of parking because they're trying to get the closest spots to downtown, and then they're circling around in that area. So I think there's already been a pretty extensive amount of, you know, questions asked about, you know, safety. You know, the police chief has previously indicated that it would be no more or less or more safe in transitioning Franklin from a one-way to a two-way. So we're you know, safety-wise looking at the same kind of impact. I think that City Manager Ryan Cotton, I think in the late 90s, really laid out very well the arguments that the two different schools of thought on this. Full pagers laid out all the arguments very well, and I think the arguments are the exact same today as they were back in the late 90s. And I think it's, you know, and this is something that I think Mr. Fritz could help enlighten all of us on, is that, you know, obviously some years ago they made a decision to do a two-way Columbus. They were limited in the distance that could go because of the railroad signals, and we would have the same type of an issue here. I don't think that a lot of the concerns that folks had with the two-way Columbus came to fruition. I don't think there's evidence of that. I am kind of curious to hear a little bit more detail, if Mr. Fritz is willing, Mayor, and you're willing to allow him to kind of indicate why there was a decision to do just like, you know, a two-way Columbus at the time and not a two-way Franklin, kind of what some of that discussion, if it was kind of try one, see how it goes, then look at the other, if there was a particular kind of method to the decision at the time.
I don't remember a whole lot of it. I wasn't in favor of the two-way street on Columbus either, so I'll be honest with you. But I'm just looking at the safety part of it myself, seeing what I see on Franklin itself. Columbus is a lot further away from any of the hills than that. It just, this whole topic of two-way, I don't even want to get into. But I'm sure if you look through all the stuff that they gave you, it tells you that one way or another doesn't affect a whole lot. But to me, I see it personally, I see it every day, I see close calls, and I don't want to see another death, and I just don't want them to be in traffic. We're too close to the hills there. And if you want to have bikes and skateboards and stuff, you know, you're going to have them out there. And how are you going to stop it if you can't? It really bothers me a lot. I'm still mind-boggled that we're even talking about that after seeing what I've witnessed.
Do you remember, Mike, what the impetus for two-way on Columbus was?
Well, a two-way in Columbus, I always say follow the money myself personally, but that's what it was all about. It doesn't really, it's still confusing to a lot of people that come to town at two-way in Columbus. I talked to people that come in there.
It was,
but
I
the
think
emphasis,
I think there was a developer who
he was going to
said
develop,
he might be interested in developing
the
that
properties,
section of Columbus, the properties along there, the private properties. But he wouldn't do it unless there was a two-way street. And I don't know that that was the only.
Well,
I think there were people who thought it should be a two-way street. I know there were business owners along Columbus who for years lobbied for a two-way street, but I know it was studied multiple times, and in the end, it went down. It was not approved until what is it, maybe 5 or 6 years ago would be my guess.
I think the developer that came in, that's why I say follow the money type thing, came in and said, hey, I'd like to develop this. And, but we looked at it and I voted no on it, and then my fellow council members said yes, and we ended up making it a two-way street. But I don't know about looking further into Franklin Street or not at that time.
Yeah, I guess I'm of the school of thought that, you know, right now with Franklin, we're shooting everybody, you know, around our downtown, whether that's good or bad. I think that's a fair debate, but I think a one-way street creates a greater incentive to have faster traffic than a two-way street would be. I think that would actually would slow traffic down. Now, you may get more traffic. I mean, that I think is probably fair to argue.
Tell the people on Grand Avenue that then. It's a two-way traffic, and watch people on there. I just talked to some people that live on there, tell me it's like a drag strip out there. Especially summertime, you got the tuners that come in there and they're going wide open, so I don't think it really slows traffic down.
They come up, are the tuners the backfiring guys?
Yeah, whatever.
They come up Franklin too. They basically come zooming up Franklin.
It doesn't matter. It
Take
doesn't
Harbor
really,
and come out Grand.
I don't believe it. I don't believe any two-way traffic actually slows traffic down if they want to.
Right. So, and I think it gets back to those. This is the exact same debate that's happened many times over the years, and I just think from a community our size to have, you know, one last one-way street for, you know, the amount of blocks that we do. I mean, we have no other one-way streets in our community.
Well, we
so
have the back end of Columbus.
Well, yes, because the railroad tracks. But aside from that, I mean, throughout our entire community, whether you're on the, you know, Washington, Robbins, Ferry, I mean,
yeah,
you know, we're talking about one-way, and we
would argue, as Mike would, Ryan, that we had a pair of arterials, okay, and one of them got changed.
Right.
And to be honest, it got changed halfway, which to me is the worst possible way to do it, but the only way we could afford to do it. I think it makes more sense. You guys know, I kind of am going to take umbrage with Karen here, that she assumes that because I live on Franklin, I only represent my own interests, which is certainly not the case. But I think I do
putting
have
some words in my mouth. I did not.
Well, I think that was certainly an inference you could draw from
I
from what
asked
you
for
said.
sensitivity to, because you did live, you know, to those
Yes,
who lived on
I heard you,
Franklin.
Karen. But what I'd like to say is, my neighborhood crosses Franklin as pedestrians regularly, and not just the people who live in my neighborhood, in Mike's neighborhood, because we both live there, but all kinds of people who street park up in Southside neighborhood cross Franklin, and they come with dogs and strollers and coolers and all kinds of things heading downtown and going away with packages, all right? And they are challenged, mostly on weekends in the summer, to get across at the pedestrian crosswalks. So I oppose making Franklin two-way. We talked about the difficulty with pedestrians. I also, if you read the studies that Ashley provided us, one of the things they talked about was the dedicated bike lane that's on Franklin coming toward the river and Columbus going away from the river. And frankly, those are bike lanes that are well used, but also, I think, for the future, those are important to, I think e-bikes and e-scooters are going to use those lanes. And based on what I read in the earlier studies of the history that they brought, they said you'd have to give up the bike lane. So I don't like giving up the bike lane when we keep talking about we want to be pedestrian friendly and non-motorized. To me, it's much more pedestrian friendly and non-motorized to leave it one way. And the last thing I guess I want to say is I don't like the idea of making it one way, part way. And we can't afford to make it or two way, part way. I think that's the worst possible solution of street design. But I think that's...
Your Honor?
Yes.
I would like to just jump in here. You know, as I said, I think we should move toward with some sensitivity, but objectively, when we do look at it, if I didn't, you know, I just don't see the logic and reasoning behind having a one-way street in our small downtown to benefit a few versus what would be convenient for, you know, for the many. That's where all of our downtown parking is. So for 90% of the people who cannot walk to town to shop or to, you know, they need to access that parking. For the merchants, they have trucks and deliveries in the back. It's very inconvenient to not have, you know, it makes it very unfriendly, you know, less navigatable.
The merchants have an alley on the back of
They
Washington.
do have but you know, what you see are people, because it's a one-way street, they are using the alley to try to access the other parking lots to try to get, you know, when the first parking lot is not full. I'm just saying that we create our own nightmare on that street for 4 blocks of our downtown area. And if we really have the merchant's best interest and all of our citizens' best interest, I think, you know, it's not even about visitors yet. It's about the rest, the 90% of Grand Haven that doesn't live there, within walking distance.
And yet,
let me just finish, please. I believe it is in the best interest, and I do support moving forward. I believe stop signs can stop signs along traffic. There are things that we can do. I just want to acknowledge, you know, your great contributions to this council, Mayor, and I was saying we should proceed sensitively and make sure that we've had the opportunity to consider all sides. What I was saying there is I'm open to postponing the decision on this to allow more input and thought, but my general leaning is toward making it a one-way street, the partial conversion as proposed by administration. Thank you.
Was that proposed by you, Ashley? Or was it put on the agenda by council members?
I placed it on the agenda based on conversations among council.
So you placed it on the agenda at the request of 2 council members or on your own?
On my own.
Okay. I think there's a, go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I mean, I've talked to Ms. Latch about this. I think we've had prior conversations at this council very publicly that we think we should take a look at doing this. So I think staff takes a look at what the council wants to look at.
I'm not criticizing. I'm just when
we've been aware that they've been studying this and they provided us with memos on this already. This isn't a shock to any of us. I think that's our staff has looked at this.
Ryan, I agree. I'm just saying that it isn't really the administration that put this on at its own initiative. It was actually put on because council members had pushed it.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yep, okay,
Yeah,
good enough.
I think that's fair, but I think that the way I understood what's, at least what's being restriped and some of the signage and that sort of thing, is the bike path is being maintained?
Correct.
Correct. So we have bike path, now that's changing on the north side of the street.
Correct.
It's that, obviously, parking signage on certainly on the south side of the street would have to be flipped around and changed, and certainly there's some changes to the intersection.
Tippahview loses its parking. It's
DP
street parking outside.
DPW believes that that would be able to be maintained, just flipped.
It's
So
kind of
it's
odd, flipped how? Oh, one
just
way?
as far as, yeah.
Okay, well, that's,
Traffic goes.
actually, it's sort of indented, so I'm not sure the street lane could run through there anyway. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I think if there's a motion on the floor, and I think we should vote.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Fritz,
No.
Lowe,
Yes.
McNally.
No.
This motion carries.
Okay, unfinished business.
Consideration by City Council of the final resolution to amend Sections 2-139 through 2-142 of the Grand Haven Code of Ordinances to amend the city's purchasing procedure. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
McNally.
Yes. Okay, moving on to city council reports. I'm gonna start with Mike Fritz. Got anything, Mike?
All I'm gonna say, to start out with, is that if anybody dies on this street, I'm gonna hold all you guys accountable for it, because I've already witnessed one before. So, on to you it goes, your responsibility. I've seen too many close calls and stuff in that order on this street, and now that you passed it, I'll have to agree with it, but I'm probably gonna have to change my walking habits, because I don't need to see a vision like I seen the last time. So thank you so much for that. Second of all, I'd like to talk about the CISPA, Kenny Forsman, the CISPA, you know, the walkway by the...
Oh, yep.
And you were talking about marble, and it's not marble. It's not marble, it's concrete. Ken stopped by, I talked with him, and it's concrete.
Nice.
And it's a little thick, because Derek had...
Concrete, it looks pretty.
It's really nice, it's gonna be really good. And he's working with the Corps right now. They're always a little bit behind everything, but they said they have funding for it, so but it's just gonna take time. We might not be on schedule, what he liked. And I've been working with him on a few things. He showed me that concrete's gonna be pretty big, because Derek wants to be able to drive trucks on it, you know, to clean it, clear it out. And so he's doing a fantastic job on that. And I was just gonna show you something here. He came to me and he says, "Hey, can you do something for me?" And it says, if you look at this, this is the way this plaque looked like on the other side. When he brought it to me, he says, "You know anybody who could take care of that?" I said, "Well," I said, "I used to do that in my younger days. I used to be a buffer in that." And I said, "But I do have some friends. My brother and I have some friends." And what we did was, we took it over to Grand River Polishing, and we ended up with this. And now these are the new plaques.
Nice.
This is just one of them that was there. And his name, you know, of course, is Jose Norezo. And it started out with this whole thing was, I don't know if you guys know a little history of it, is that when Ken did it the first time, it was all kids' involvement in that. What he did was he went to the school and had the kids, they all brought in 10 pop cans and bring it in, and they would use that money that they had to go for this. Well, Julie Bildner, which was in charge of which is Harbor Transit, said she'll go one step further. If you bring cans on the bus, you know, she would take the tops off them, and the little tabs back then for the hospital and that, they would buy lung machines and stuff like that. She would take it two things. She was can and a top, and she would take care of two different things, so it was a good thing going on for us. So it was pretty interesting on how it all goes, but Ken's moving forward, we're going good on it.
Before summer?
And I gotta give a shout out to Grand River Polishing, because they did that at free gratis.
Nice.
Thank you very much. So I want to say thank you to him for spending his time in that and got him all set for him to go on there. And baseball's coming.
The Tigers?
Tigers, yeah, hey, we'll see once. Maybe.
Where is retiring.
Yeah.
This is his last season?
Then Dana's gone now, but I remember one year I was at my birthday and I was sitting in Tiger Stadium, and all of a sudden these beers start coming down to me, and I look over there and here's part of my police force over there trying to entice a city council member, and they kept bringing beers, having beers sent down to me. They were at the same game I was, so I know she's a Tiger fan, and so am I, so.
Good.
We'll be all right.
And it?
Yeah, that's about all.
Kevin?
I'm good, thank you.
Karen?
Sure. On Tuesday, February 28th, I joined the city manager, city clerk, and some other members of council and of area municipality leadership in attending the Chamber of Commerce's Tuesday Forum Series, and it was a presentation by Matt Dunsmore regarding concepts put forward in a book called The Infinite Game. And for those who aren't familiar with the book is based on game theory, which is a study of mathematical models of strategic interactions among rational agents or people. But what's really cool about it is it really looks at the old, some of you, if you remember in school, they talked about the prisoner's dilemma, cooperate or defect, and how you interact. And it's really become a way of looking at two-person zero-sum games versus when you are going to, like in the game of life, so to speak, you are in an infinite number of games. And so you can't think of this as a finite win-lose situation. You win over your opponent. So it has a lot of implications. And two of my key takeaways for that, and I encourage you to go out on the Chamber of Commerce website and watch it, but two of my key takeaways were our community needs to focus on our common vision and just noble cause, something that's big, bold, future-oriented, that unites us all. And it should be seemingly such a stretch that it may never be achieved. And part of the way of doing it, that is thinking hard about the legacy we hope to leave for future generations. So think about that, big, greater good. And then the other one was just sort of, the approach to conflict, finite and infinite games, that we need to take a different approach to conflict and working with those who disagree with us, whether that's the, individuals or organizations, and that we should not try to win at any cost, because we should do everything in our power to advance the noble cause or the future legacy that we want. So it's really important. Sorry, Siri's trying to help me with. We should be really working on what is that, make sure that we're clear and that we do have a common vision of the future. It's okay that we might have different ideas on how to get there, but we can coalesce and we can find that commonality by, looking for that, looking at that strategic vision. So I know that there's some work that we have done previously that we may need to dust off and kind of bring out and really, take a look at and embrace in that respects. But I encourage everyone to, if you're interested in finding out more, the presentation is out on the Chamber of Commerce's website. And by the way, I want to, shout out to the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation, because they actually co-sponsor that. I know I keep calling it the Chamber of Commerce series, but it's really jointly sponsored by them and many generous companies in our that are part of the Chamber of Commerce and that have helped to sponsor some of these speakers. So that's it, Mayor.
Ryan?
I'm good, thanks.
I just had a couple things. I wanted to thank the Department of Public Safety and local citizen support for helping to identify suspects in our graffiti case. I'd like to encourage any adults that are listening to this to talk to their teenage kids, both to explain what kind of damage hate speech does in our community, in a small community like ours, and to ask their kids if they have any information that might be useful in the continuing investigation. And if they do, refer it to the Department of Public Safety. I wanted to talk about a nominating petition deadline, which Maria actually passed to me, but I think I got a copy of it. What did I do with it? Basically, if you are at all interested in running for public office in the city of Grand Haven, or anywhere else, I think locally, there's an April deadline.
April 25th at 4 p.m.
Thank you. April 25th at 4 p.m. And if it's within the city of Grand Haven, I think you just got to go to see the city clerk. You can get a petition. Go ahead, tell us what we
Yes.
need to know, Maria.
So what we have up for election this year is office of the mayor. We have two city, which has a term end date of 2025. We have 2 council seats with a term end of 2027 and 2 BLP seats with a term end of 2029. Petition packets can be picked up in my office. And again, the deadline to turn those in is April 25th at 4 p.m.
So if you've ever thought about public office and running for public office, there's an opportunity for you in this lovely town. And I encourage anybody who's interested to apply. That's thing one. We had a visit from Senator Peters' staff and to talk about Harbor Island. I don't have the date, but it was last week. Ashley, Councilmember Lowe, and I, and Derek Gatos sat with Peter Dickow and another member of Senator Peters' staff. And we talked about different grant opportunities that exist. So far, we really haven't identified anything specific that we're a match for. There is federal funding coming down for a variety of different programs, but there's not a lot that we've seen that's coming down for environmental remediation. So we're keeping our eyes open and we're optimistic, but I'm not sure how that's going to shake out in the end. I want to plug a fundraising campaign. There's a basketball court on the east end, right near the sewer authority, and Ryan at the sewer authority has sort of taken it needs refurbishing, and it's become a project for a number of people. I heard the Eagles are doing fundraising for it, but they're selling bricks. I think there's the big bricks are $300, and the small bricks I think might be $100. I'm not sure, but I encourage anybody who's got a few bucks to donate to a fine cause to think about helping fund the basketball court, because I don't think there's anything we can do that is better for our community than give our youth someplace fun and cool to hang out and recreate. So basketball was a big part of my life when I was a kid, and I know it's a big part of a lot of kids' lives and young adults' lives and even older adults' lives. Everyone can play basketball. And if I'm not a Tiger fan, I am a Spartan fan, so and I'd be in the is zone. Anyway, I just was going to say, watch for opportunities to support the fundraiser for that basketball court. And then I'd like to thank the BLP because every time I hit the light switch, my power goes on. And to be honest, with the storms Michigan's been seeing and the rest of the country, I keep reading about power outages, and I'm glad to have reliable, secure, stable power. That's all I got. Ashley?
All I had was a quick poll for the budget work session. I threw out the 19th without realizing today, upon Maria's inquiry for CapCon is also the 19th, so it would be really coming right back from Lansing to your budget work session. So if that's not preferred, I definitely understand. And I think Emily and I have also had the 20th available, same time, 6:30. So really just looking to poll your availability. 6:30.
6:30 on which date?
Thursday the 20th, unless everyone is willing that is attending CapCon to drive immediately from the last session back to discuss the budget.
Yeah, I can't do the 20th, unfortunately.
That'd be tough coming back from Lansing anyway.
Yeah, no, I get that.
18th?
18th is also a CapCon date, so if
Yep.
you're doing both days, you would not be able to come back. Well, I mean, you
Okay.
could, but you probably wouldn't want to.
So,
I'm only doing one day.
Not everyone is only doing one day.
Now we're discussing this a little bit, are we gonna do a legislative,
Visit?
meet and greet with them like we did last time?
working on seeing what we can coordinate.
Very good, I think
Good.
it's very productive.
Well, I suppose that would push us into,
Can you do it the week before? Will you be ready?
I guess that's an Emily question.
You want to come to the podium, Emily?
She might not want to, but would
her
you
on the
please come to
spot.
the podium, Emily?
I just know that you wanted your meetings a little tighter and the ones in April fall, that those 2 weeks in a row. So if the week of the 10th, the week of the 10th is a possibility for,
Do the 11th or 12th would be fine for me.
Yeah, 11, 12.
Is that a Tuesday?
Take a nap.
the
12th is Wednesday.
12th would be ideal, as there's
12th is a Wednesday.
planning commission on Tuesday, so.
12?
12th at 6:30?
Does that work for you, Emily? It'll work.
That 6 works for everybody. I can make 6 work that day too.
Okay.
Go earlier.
So what time? And is it here?
To be determined, likely Central Park Place.
Okay.
So to confirm, that's April 12th at 6 or 6:30?
6 o'clock. Whatever works for you guys, 6:30.
6?
6 is fine.
6 is
6
fine.
Okay.
p.m.
If Ryan can make 6.
Yep.
So April 12th at 6 p.m., tentatively at Central Park Place?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and then just an additional reminder, Maria sent out an inquiry for CapCon. So if you haven't registered yet, or are looking to register and you haven't connected with Maria yet, just let her know and she'll get you.
I will register you. Please let me know by the end of the week so we can get in before early bird registration ends.
Okay. Can I ask who's going?
Ashley is going, Mike is going, and Karen is going.
Okay. Ashley is going? Maria going? No?
I have a MAMC legislative and CEO meeting. It's a elections
Okay.
meeting, so I can't go.
That's fine. I just am trying to figure it out. That's all I got.
And then, so please register by the end of the, or connect with Maria to register by the end of the week if you haven't already. And then last but not least, I just wanted to acknowledge that the calendar is posted on the website. So we've heard a lot of feedback, digital version. It's printable if you need assistance in printing it. It's not as high quality as the one we would mail out as far as printing, but we're happy to print it for anybody who stops in. And that is all.
Okay.
I gotta say, thank you for putting it on there, but people that don't have a computer, it's very difficult for them to see it.
Yeah, we'll have a couple copies printed as well if anyone comes in.
I've had a lot of seniors and they tell me that they don't monkey with it at all, so.
And I know we've had a couple individuals call stating such, and Mary has kindly offered to mail them a copy.
Very good, thank you.
I know that I happened to be in City Hall the day that they were supposed to come out and they didn't come out. And I don't even remember what day that was, but the clerk's office was getting more than its share of, I'm just going to say, concern by citizens about they felt let down.
We have received a large amount of disappointed feedback in not having the calendar from residents.
It's important to a lot of people.
Yes, because it not only has like meeting dates and important city dates, but it also has a lot of important information on it in the area, and we have received complaints about that.
Yeah. Okay. It's good. Just good to know.
Maybe we should reconsider that next year.
I think it's worth relooking at. I mean, interestingly, if you cut it out and actually people care about it, they let you know. And I think that happened. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I think we want to do the will of the people. I think we cut it out because it was $10,000 or something like that. And we said, gee, we have to make some tough decisions. We'd rather that happen than take away from staff education and other, so we tried it out. If the people speak and they want it back in lieu of some other, things, we'll talk about that in our budget meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second call to the audience.
And we do have a caller on the line that's been on for a few minutes, if you want to take that first.
I will take that first, but let me get through my spiel. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address and will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. If it continues ringing, please remain on the line until your turn. We will take all callers. Caller on the line.
Caller, if you could please state your name and address. Go ahead.
Okay. This is Mark Bancek, 810 South Hopkins. And I just want to make a comment regarding Franklin Street going two ways. I think it's a bad idea. If you spend any amount of time downtown near the corner of Harbor and Franklin, you'll notice the light there is very short. There's numerous pedestrians crossing Harbor from both sides, and it's tough for the vehicles to turn left or right, as it is with both having their own lane. Keep in mind, in order to get to the state park and the city beach, you have to turn left on Harbor from Franklin. So, and that, if you're going to be coming from downtown, whether it be visitors, residents, anybody, including myself, you have to turn left. And we've already got one left-hand lane already blocked off on Washington. I think it's a bad idea to have two ways on Franklin. I'm concerned about accidents, including myself, either walking or riding my bike on Franklin. I think it's the wrong decision. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob Manezza, 945 Washington Avenue. I could talk for quite a long time about the two-way conversion on Columbus. I was in the thick of that since 2010 when the streetscape on Washington was being worked on, because it was two-way for a while, went back to one-way. We finally got it back to two-way as far as we could. But I don't have enough time in 3 minutes to go through all that stuff. So I would say this, I would like to comment a little bit on your discussion here. As far as Franklin becoming two-way instead of one-way, I never saw a really compelling reason why you needed to switch one way or the other. It makes kind of a nice buffer really between downtown and the neighbors to the south as a one-way street, because frankly, one-way streets are faster and they're a little bit more forbidding in terms of traffic. So my view on two-way versus one-way is that one-way streets move cars, two-way streets encourage commerce, they encourage people on sidewalks, they encourage a better street presence for human activity. And that was a really compelling reason to look at Columbus going two-way instead of remaining one-way. And the traffic was never symmetrical, at least not in my lifetime, as far as Franklin versus Columbus. Franklin always had about twice the load of cars as Columbus, and so making Columbus two-way and leaving Franklin one-way was actually perfectly logical. It didn't need to be a one-way pair. Each street served a different function at different times of day, and it kind of made sense. What I would like to comment on is that we really ought to look harder again at getting Columbus two-way all the way to Beacon. That would benefit the Centertown businesses. They've asked for it repeatedly. It would be more logical. Having streets change from two-way to one-way and to two-way, you find that a lot in a lot of cities. It's not uncommon. It's not a ridiculous thing, but it's not ideal. But if we could get past the railroad tracks and get that two-way all the way to Beacon, I think that would be beneficial and it'd be more worthy of our efforts than worrying about the traffic on Franklin. Now, we ran into a problem with signalization on the railroad tracks. The railroads were not interested in working with us. They frankly were looking for ways to screw the city over on that one. They finally came to us and said, well, you got to change all the signals in town. They were just trying to make us go away. I think that with better conversation with the railroads and maybe some help from our friends in Lansing, we might get somewhere with that. We might benefit that portion of our city with a better traffic flow and more logical traffic not just for moving cars fast, but for the activities of the people of this town. So I would like to see you work on that, work on Columbus, two-way from Fifth Street to Beacon, and finish that job that we started. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I just wanted to mention on Franklin, I expect there's going to be quite a cost associated with that, and I'm a little bit disappointed that the cost numbers were not discussed and the community didn't have hardly any time to weigh in on this. It seems to be another rush deal. And in my mind, it's related directly to closing the first block of Washington. I think a conversation should have taken place with that also. When I look at it, who's going to benefit? Well, it's sort of like we've closed down that first block of Washington. We've got, what, drink carts in the common area, right? So the people are benefiting mostly our beverage and hospitality industry. What about having them pay for some of it? You know, I brought up the issue of the sticker taxes, and that other communities have, you know, they compensate for the costs due to these kind of things. The social districts, this seems to me to be another perfect example of a cost that's associated with a social district. And I think, you know, we shouldn't rush these things through before deciding on the who's going to pick up all the costs. I guess the taxpayer is picking it up. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. I think that's it, folks. Meeting adjourned.